What's going on, fellas? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Tommy, and this is going to be part 2 of my testing with the DJI FPV system. Now, if you watched my first video, I gave you guys my first impressions about flying in HD, and guys, it is definitely amazing, but there are definitely some concerns if you are looking into the system, and we're going to do some tests today because, you know, I recall a time back when I first started an FPV where there was always that one guy that bought that dirty ass cheap Boss Cam transmitter, and every time he showed up at the field, everyone's like, oh great, here comes Bob again with this dirty ass transmitter, because at any time he plugged in, he just knocked everybody out of the sky. Now the good news is that, you know, in the world of analog, it's pretty much hard to buy a transmitter that will do something like that, and for the most part, all transmitters as far as analog goes today doesn't have that problem, and people can plug and things are fine. But when you introduce some new technology, especially when something is digital, how does that play with analog? So in today's video, we're gonna find that out. Really quick, just because I read you guys' comments on the first video, no, I am not being paid by DJI to make this video. No, I am not sponsored. I did get the unit for free to do this review and to do some testing with it. Now, that said, I do have some affiliate links down below, but I don't want you guys to get this twisted. I don't care either way if you buy the DJI FPV system or if you buy analog, mostly because I got affiliate links for both down in the description link. So guys, my goal here for this video is just to help you guys decide, is this something that you want to buy or not? Maybe you want to stick with analog, maybe you want to try something new. That's the whole point. So let's jump straight into it. Actually, you know what, before I do that, let's jump to In Studio Tommy, so that he can go ahead and answer a lot of questions that you guys wrote out in the first video. We'll bang that out and we'll come back. So In Studio Tommy, go take it over. All right guys, I checked out your comments. You guys definitely have some questions. I did a little bit of research, so I got some answers for you guys. Let's just do this shotgun style, starting off with, do you need to run their radio? Answer is no. If you've got a Taranis, if you've got Futaba, Spectrum, if you've got anything existing, you can just run that. There is no need to run DJI's radio. Diopters. Will this system have diopters? And the answer to that is yes. DJI at some point will be offering different diopters for you folks who are wearing corrective lenses. However, that said, my buddy Ryan behind the camera, he wears corrective lenses, and he actually put on the DJI goggle system with his glasses on, and he said had no problems whatsoever, so you don't have to wait for it. Next up, can you send the HD feed out? Yes, I realize there is some confusion because the documentation talks about this broadcast and this public channel, and the answer is, as of right now, there is currently no like HDMI out of the goggle system, which means that the only way to do this is to have like some type of standalone solution that can receive the HD signal. And yes, I did ask DJI. They are going to have some type of standalone solution at some point. I don't know how far along that is, but it's coming. Will there be different face pads? Some of you must be Asian. The answer is yes. DJI, I think actually as of now, offers different face pad contours to help minimize that light leakage. Although I will say, I had that light leakage, not a big problem. The HD's freaking stunning, didn't bother me. Will it work for the Mavic/Spark? No. Will this work with Velocidrone? DRL, liftoff, Velocidrone, these are all drone simulators. The answer is no, it does not. Do you have to use Betaflight? No, you can actually use KISS, you can use Flight 1, you can use Falco X. You can put this on your dog. Guys, you don't even need to use flight controller software to make the system work because it is a standalone FPV system. Does this transmit on UHF? The answer is no, this transmits on 5.8. And just to be specific, the video and the radio link transmits on 5.8 gigahertz. Is there a built-in analog receiver? The answer is no. And you know what? If I just may interject here a little bit, I really wish DJI actually put an analog receiver into the goggles because, in my opinion, that would make the transition and getting into this kind of a no-brainer. Because obviously if you're buying into the system, and you have a whole fleet of drones like I do, it's gonna take a while before you convert the entire thing over to digital. Man, if these goggles received analogs, that would be freaking awesome because then you just have to roll with this one set of goggles. However, that said, there is an audio, an AV input on the goggles, so if you were to hook up, you know, like a standalone analog receiver, then you could use the DJI goggles with your analog VTXs. Does this include the drone? No. Can it be installed in a fixed wing? The answer is yes. Can you replace the camera? The answer to that is yes, absolutely. And I know if you look at the pictures, it looks like you just can't because the cable just goes in and it doesn't have the connectors that you and I are used to seeing like on the back of like an FPV camera. But you actually just take out the back cover, which is like held down by like 2 screws, and then there is like a ribbon type connector, and that's how you change the camera, because it's gonna happen. You might smash up your camera, that's gonna happen. All right, back to in the field, Tommy. Today's video, we're gonna test out how does analog play with digital and vice versa. So that way you guys will know if you did buy this system or if you're planning to buy this system, you'll know what to expect when you show up to your local race or your local group of friends and start flying with them. So let's jump straight into it. All right guys, so here's what's going on. We've got the DJI FPV system. It is in this quad right over here. And then the analog side is gonna be right here. This is a remix. So this is the Immersion RC Tramp. That goes up to 600 milliwatts. As you may or may not know, the DJI system is running at 700 milliwatts, so should be fairly close. The other thing that I asked DJI to send me a channel listing of what their frequency spacing is, and come to find out, it is extremely close to race band. And in some channels, it's just as far off as just half a megahertz. So this is gonna be a really good test. One more thing. So obviously on the DJI side, we're running the DJI FPV goggles. And for the analog, we are running a set of Fat Sharks with the rapid fire module, and then this is the setup that I've got going on for the antennas over here. So first test, I'm gonna choose race band 5 or channel 5 because that is the one channel where the channel separation is only off by half a megahertz. It's pretty much the same thing. And so I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna fly a little bit that way, and you can see there's definitely a lot of trees and so there's just a lot of object penetration that this is gonna have to deal with. And then I'm gonna have Ryan plug in right next to me, like right here, and we'll see what happens, and then we'll move on to the next test. So let's do that. So I'm gonna take off, and then Ryan, as long as you're in frame, I want you to plug literally like right next to me.
After you take off?
After I take off, yeah. All right. So, I'm like 50 feet away. Why don't you go ahead and plug in and let's see what happens. Oh boy, oh God, okay, that just completely took me out. Okay, did you unplug?
I unplugged.
Okay, and of course now I am back. Let me just bring myself back over here. Oh wow, it just fail-safed on me. Whoa, I've got a fail-safe situation. And you're not plugged in anymore?
No.
Okay, so that was really interesting. I totally expected the video to drop, which it completely did as soon as you plugged in. Of course, you're like right next to me. But I didn't expect it to fail safe.
Okay guys, I know, that is super weird, but we're gonna get back to that. Really quick, I wanted to explain the footage that you guys are going to see here because some of you guys asked me on the last video why I just didn't show the DVR footage from the goggles when the latency and freeze framing started to happen. And the reason why I didn't do that is because the way the goggle DVR records it is it basically just skips the latency portion and it just jumps straight to the next available frame. And so I didn't feel like it was going to convey that. But I've taken the opportunity to try and replicate that for you guys here. And what I basically did was I took the 2 clips from the air unit, which obviously won't have any latency, and then I took the clip from the goggles and I overlaid them together. And what I did was I analyzed it frame by frame, looking for any discrepancies. And when I did find a discrepancy, I inserted a freeze frame in Final Cut, and then I dragged that out until the clips lined up again. And I felt like that would be the best way to show you guys what the experience like in the goggles. But I want to be super duper uber clear that I obviously edited this, and so I'm trying to replicate what that experience is like, and I just don't want you guys to think that that is exactly what you see in the goggles. It's close, it's pretty close, but it's not exact. Alright, so I'm gonna bring you guys back into the video.
Okay, so I'm on channel 5. I'm gonna hit record so that you guys can see what's happening back at home. Let's get a little sync clap. Not that that matters because there's nothing else recording. Okay. Go ahead and plug in. I'm not that far away. Ooh, it is super laggy. I'm definitely getting that freeze framing. The lower left hand RSSI is giving me red. Ooh, I'm down to 1 bar as I just go behind just trees not that far away from me, but it is definitely laggy. Let's get a little closer. So I'm like 37 milliseconds. Sometimes it drops down to 29, but I am definitely seeing the pixelation on either end. But this is definitely enough to kind of make me kind of not like this. Hey Ryan, why don't you start backing away a little bit? So with him that far away, this feels fine. And I feel comfortable. So first of all, standing right next to you, it's just not gonna happen. So let's just call it right now. If you're on a DJI FPV system and you're on any kind of analog, just don't plug in next to the guy. It's gonna mess him up really bad. Which kind of sucks because with analog, depending on what channel you're on, depending on the VTX, you can do that and it's not that big of a deal. Then he started walking away about 20 to 30 feet and it got better, but I could still tell that there was some type of interference going on because I had pixelation on both ends of the bar, and it just didn't feel clean. So I would be super hesitant about doing anything kind of sketchy at all if there was any kind of analog like next to me. All right guys, so for this next test, I'm gonna have Ryan, who's going to be holding the analog quad. I'm gonna have him go basically right over to the other side of that building. And what he's gonna do, he's gonna plug in over there while I fly the DJI quad on channel 5, and he's gonna cycle through all of the channels.
Alright guys, so this next clip, I'm not gonna do that freeze framing stuff because A, it's just a total pain in the ass to compare this frame by frame, but B, and more importantly, I wanted to show you guys what the total net effect is of having latency. So I want you to pay attention. When this video starts off, the two clips are actually perfectly lined up. And so what I'm going to do now is speed this clip up. Alright, so I stopped it here just so that you can see just how far the analog quad is from me. But what you probably start noticing now, especially since at this point Ryan has plugged in the analog, he's been cycling through the channels, he's likely already approached channel 5, which is the same channel that I am. But what you're going to start noticing is that the top clip, which is the air unit recording, is no longer in sync with the bottom clip, which is the goggle recording. Now I want to say, you know, at this whole time I actually felt pretty comfortable flying even with that little bit of latency, but I think what this goes to show you is that having separation between any analog source and you, if you're flying the DJI goggles, is going to help tremendously. Alright, so we're approaching kind of towards the end. As you can see, I've gotten so comfortable, even with that little bit of latency happening because the analog is plugged in, that I'm able to navigate my way through these gaps in the trees. But what I want you to notice is that once we get towards the very end, look at how far off the two clips are, and that is essentially the result of the net latency that is occurring with the DJI FPV system whenever there is analog or just any type of RF interference happening.
Okay, well, so I mean, there was a couple of moments where I felt something, but it wasn't terrible, but I can tell something was going on because the pixelation was there. And then there was one moment where it started freeze framing. I'm assuming that's when you turn on the channel 5. And then after that, I actually started getting used to it to the point that I started shooting some of these gaps. So now, dang, I don't know, because at first I was like, nope, this is not doable, but maybe I got used to it. All right, guys, so here is the next test that we are going to run. So we know for sure that an analog system just can't be right next to the DJI FPV system, and that was with me being on channel 5. So now what we're gonna do is let's just see what happens with maximum channel separation.
Alright guys, so as I was editing this next segment, this next test, I immediately saw something that was just throwing me off. It just looked so wrong and it wasn't making sense. You see, this next test, the whole point was to just further explore if having maximal channel separation would have a better result in terms of latency performance. And in the field, it was very obvious that having maximum channel separation felt better. The latency was a lot lower. You could still feel something, but it was the best compared to the previous one where I was on channel 5. But the problem was, as you can probably see from the footage, the two clips aren't lined up from the get-go. And so, you know, when I first looked at this, I thought there's definitely something wrong because the resulting footage doesn't match what I felt when I was testing this and flying it. And then I realized what happened. And some of you keen folks probably figured it out early on. And that's because Ryan plugged in the analog quad right at the very beginning when we were trying to do a sync clap. And as we know, having any type of analog system right next to the DJI system is just a no-no, no matter how far off the channel separation is. And so I decided to leave that in here because, you know, I think it's going to show you what a profound difference and impact it has when you have any kind of RF interference with the digital system. So as you're gonna see, I'm doing flips and rolls, and I mean, you can just see now how far off the timing is, and that's just because that's how much latency was introduced to the system when that analog system was plugged in right next to me. But I want to say, even though that the latency was super apparent in the very beginning, it was actually the best to fly with when you're having maximum channel separation. So I definitely want to point that out. But I also want to point out one other interesting thing that happened during this test, and that is I happened to fly right next to Ryan where the analog quad is, right when he turned to channel 7, and what you're gonna see is basically a complete freeze frame on my end. And I wanted to show that because there's a possibility that even if you guys are flying with your analog buddies and you are, you know, have a good amount of separation from you, if at some point in time you are farther away from yourself than an analog quad is, and you guys are both on the same channel or very close, well then there's a good chance that something like this is going to happen. It's right about this time that I think that Ryan goes on to his channel 8, which is my channel 7 on the DJI system, and I just go to a complete freeze frame.
So here's the scenario. You are Camp Analog. You say screw the DJI digital system. But your homie Ryan shows up to the spot. He has a lot of money, so he went and bought the DJI FPV system and wants to show it off. We need to find out what happens when he plugs in. So let's just do the obvious. Channel 1 versus your channel 1. Ryan, by the way, is right over there. He's just a little off camera getting things set up. So obviously I am fully expecting to just get completely blown out of the sky, channel 1 being channel 1. I am going to hit record on here. You know what? I'm not even going to take off because I don't want to walk over there and change props. So why don't you just plug in right now and let's just see what happens to my video. Okay, so you are currently on channel 7, so I'm going to need you to go down to channel 1. Oh, wait. What channel are you on right now? Because that just super messed. Okay, nope, I guess we're...
channel 2 now.
Okay. For a second, I just went black. Oh, this is getting terrible.
Channel 1.
This is channel 1?
Yep.
Okay, well, this is...
Hang on, let me re-record.
I mean, I can still see, but this is not, this is no bueno. Like, I definitely got lines. You guys will see it in the DVR, but this isn't good. So why don't you just start going farther away? And I'm gonna just start flying, and then that way we'll see how far I can go before that's a problem. Yeah, I mean, I've got some noise for sure. This is still flyable. And it looks like the farther away from me he gets, the better. So you guys can see he's way over here. So I'm going over here. I'll be curious to hear what he says about any kind of interference that he's got. But as you can see from my DVR, there's definitely some stuff going on. Now what I'm gonna do, oh, look at that, that's really bad. All right, I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna change my channel over to the far end. I'm gonna go to channel 8. And channel 8 looks good. I don't know what channel he is on.
1 minute.
So he's coming back. He's a lot closer to me, I'm guessing. My analog on channel 8, I get some noise, but it's not bad. What channel are you on, Ryan?
1.
So he's on 1, which means we are far, again, we're like as far as possible. The analog system does get some interference, but it was, I mean, everybody's gonna be different, but I'd be able to fly through that. Would I do something super sketchy? It depends, probably, maybe. I would say that the interference is kind of the same. I mean, here's the thing though, I could be flying and you could be right next to me,
right.
And as long as you weren't on my channel, it was fine.
Yeah.
Okay, if you're running the DJI FPV system, you just can't have any analog near you. just don't. If they have to be, just make sure you're as far away channel as possible. If you're analog, it's a little bit more lenient, but there's still some interference. Take that if you will. Now I'm gonna take it back to In Studio Tommy for the wrap up and final thoughts, because there's a couple of other things that I want to point out. And I'll save it for that guy. I was about to do it right now. No. All right, In Studio Tommy, you take it over. So we're not gonna end this video without testing that again. So what we're gonna do is, I'm going to just line of sight fly the DJI quad just right over here. I'm gonna bring that angle down a little bit so you can kind of see the quad's kind of right over there. And let's see if we get a failsafe. All right, so go ahead and plug in. That was a freaking failsafe, dude. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's working again.
Nope, now it's not.
Okay.
So now unplug.
Oh, wow, that's hot.
Yeah, that VTX probably. And we're good again.
Okay, let's try it again. Just confirm.
No, we already know. We already know.
Confirm. I want to see it.
All right, fine. He wants to see this again. All right, we're gonna hover.
I want to see it fall out of the air. It's instant.
That is a confirmed. That is a confirmed failsafe, fellas.
I know.
So if you're an analog guy, and you're on the same channel as the dude on the DJI FPV system, and you're right next to him, and his quad is any kind of distance, that was just like 10 feet. That is just a full-on failsafe. So that is.
Control link is
That is, yeah, so control, yeah, the whole link is compromised, control and video. That is crazy. All right, now let's bring it into In Studio Tommy for the wrap up. All right, so now that we know what happens when analog and digital are flying in the same air, let's talk about a couple of things, because I've been flying this now for a couple of weeks, and I just gotta reiterate, flying through HD is still awesome. Like I would have guessed that like by now it would have worn off, and like the whole flying in HD, I'd have been like, yeah, whatever. But because I'm going back and forth between HD and analog, it's starting to become more of like, I appreciate HD after I fly analog. So I fly HD, yeah, it's cool. And then I go fly analog and I'm kind of like, oh, this is kind of whack. So who knows, time will tell. Eventually, I definitely see this time coming where, you know, I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna wish I was flying HD, you know, when I go back to an analog system. So beware, if you know that you just can't afford to swap everything over to digital, just don't even look through the goggles, because you're gonna look through the goggles, you're gonna be like, I need that in my life. Speaking of cost, I know in the comments, like one of the initial things was, whoa, this is just way too expensive. And at first I was like, yeah, this is probably gonna be an expensive system. But then on the day I released my video, DJI released the pricing, And I wanted to break it down. So if you take a look, right? If we take a look at the analog side of things, and if we pick like the really good stuff, let's just say you want Fat Shark HDOs. Let's say you want like one of the top of the line VTXs. Obviously, if you get the goggles, you need to get yourself a rapid fire module. And if you start to add all these things up, and I'm gonna put it up on the screen here, it's actually not that much more expensive. And in fact, depending on where you're coming from, it's not expensive at all. So let's just say you're starting completely fresh, you're new to FPV, you don't have a radio, you don't have goggles, you don't have anything. Well, guess what? You can buy the combo from DJI and it's actually gonna come in cheaper than its analog counterpart. And the biggest reason is because you don't have to buy a separate video receiving unit or module like as you would with an analog system. Now, all right, I realize not everybody's gonna be starting fresh. In fact, I'm pretty sure a lot of my viewers are already, well, just real deep and heavily invested into FPV. You don't need a radio, you don't need to start fresh. Well, I did that comparison too. And if you look at this, I'm gonna put up on the screen, it's still not that much more expensive. So if you don't need the radio, right, well, you're obviously gonna need the goggles. So you buy the goggles, and Fat Shark HDOs are 500 bucks. The DJI goggles are $529. Fat Shark goggles, you still need to buy rapid fire. That's like $129 or something like that, $139. Let's before I do that, let's $180. Okay, yeah, so if you go to getfpv.com, they have a bundle for the rapid fire module plus antennas for $180, and then they've got the Fat Shark HDO for $500. So those two things put together is already 680 bucks, plus the camera, right, an FPV Eagle, that's the one I liked, right, an Eagle 2, that's $45. And when you do that comparison, DJI system is still cheaper. And again, it's just because you don't have to buy this rapid fire module. So, you know, at the end of the day, if you do bust a camera, you are gonna pay about $15 more to replace the HD camera. If you bust the VTX, you're gonna pay about $50 more to buy a digital VTX. So when you look it down to like, all right, I'm breaking things and I'm constantly replacing things, the DJI system is gonna cost more over the long run, assuming you just keep breaking things. That pretty much wraps this up. Again, my name is Tommy. Hopefully you guys, you know, I've given you guys enough information to kind of help you decide if this DJI HD system is for you. And if it's not for you, that is okay. I mean, I get it. Like, analog still has that performance that you like, that nice, smooth, solid latency. And if you're doing bando situations like I am, the analog is gonna win there. My name's Tommy. I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace out.